You will never eat Mama Put again after watching this. African folk tales for story time pushed folklore great. I'll make the narrator a UK-US style female journalist. I'll use Emily Carter, investigative reporter. The Global Chronicle, West Africa desk. Ghosts, 1991. If that works, here's your single flow, era true, journalist front and center story. Dark moral plus investigative plus suspense plus emotional redemption. Internally paced like 6 chapters but delivered as one continuous paragraph. In Lagos, 1991, the rain on zinc roofs sounded like typewriter keys. And every time NEPA took the light, my cassette recorder clicked into the hush and kept spinning. My name is Emily Carter, investigative reporter with The Global Chronicle, West Africa desk, and this is how the city's most beloved Mama Put taught me that some meals are cooked with hunger, some with hope, and a few with things you should never feed a human soul. First I followed the line, an endless ribbon of office clerks, danfo toques, market women and soldiers on pass, all drifting toward a wood-frame shack under patched umbrellas in Oberland, where a scarlet stew breathed like a living thing. They called her Mama Ns, a widow who rose from nothing and fed the city for a decade. And the story everyone loved to tell went like this. She lost her husband young. She suffered, she struggled, and Lagos, hard, loud, bright, and unforgiving, finally smiled on her. But a journalist learns to wait in the shadow between a legend's lines. So I stood across the road by a yellow Peugeot 504 and wrote down what didn't fit. The queue looked glazed. Men with pockets turned out flashing wads they couldn't afford. A woman fanned herself with a church program and whispered, "Just extra stew like a prayer." And when I asked 3 different people what made the taste special, their answers were the same word in 3 different mouths: addiction. Second, I cut back in time, because that's how you build a case. You rewind the tape until the hiss becomes a map. At the archives in Surulere, the clerk slid me a brown file with marriage and death records. Obinna N. Civil servant dead at 32. Natural causes. A neat stamp that rarely tells the whole truth. Then neighborhood interviews. An old landlady with kerosene on her hands. A tailor with a short fuse on his temper. A young hawker who remembered a woman on the curb with a child asleep on her lap. And the murmur passed between them like harmattan dust. They accused her. They drove her out. They took the house. Lagos swallowed her. And I wrote it all. Because humiliation is a kind of hunger that can turn any pot into a weapon. Third, I watched the kitchen. And kitchens tell the truth. Steamy dawn. Lanterns flickering, tin ladles knocking iron pots. The air fat with onions and pepper. And in the half-light I saw a small black calabash move from a raffia bag to the back of the stove the way a secret moves from mouth to mouth. I am not a policeman, and this was not a raid. So I did what investigators do when the law is not yet listening. I bought a plate, requested takeaway, asked for plenty stew, and when the vendor's back turned, I swabbed the sauce into a sterile vial, slipped it into my shoulder bag beside spare cassettes, and a pocket Bible I brought more for sources than salvation. In Louth Lagos University Teaching Hospital. A lab technologist I trust, no names, not then, not now, ran preliminary screens. He didn't speak much, just shook his head and said the word nobody wants attached to food. Blood. Fourth, you never publish on one test. Not in a city where rumor is gasoline, so I layered proof. 2 more samples across 2 weeks, same result. Then pattern watching. On market days, crowds were thicker, the smell sharper, the cash faster. On off days, the air slumped and the frenzy cooled. Cross-checking receipts showed a spike aligned to women's cycles among staff. An older cook complained to me off the record about Madam's timing. and no day off on red days. And I wrote it down because patterns are footprints, and footprints lead to doors. A rival vendor, Mama Sada, rolled her eyes at my questions, then finally muttered, "Market no be for one person, which is Lagos for every throne falls." And I filed it under motive and memory, because rivals predict endings they don't cause. Fifth, the city itself began speaking. A cleaner from Mama N's big new house in Ikeja said the madam didn't sleep anymore, that boils took her skin and fear took her breath. A driver said he had seen her count money and then cry. A young woman at the gate said she missed Roy Niniu, the daughter in London who called once a week on crackling Nitel lines and asked how the restaurant was doing, and everyone said fine because you can't mail heartbreak over an ocean. And then the call came that changes a reporter into something else, a trembling voice. Anti-journalist come, an address, a whisper, a click. Sixth, I met Inini me, under the dim bulb of a hallway that smelled of antiseptic and ash, her accent part London, part Lagos, her eyes all daughter. She led me to a room where Mama Nennis lay thinner than any rumor, bandaged like a soldier who lost the wrong war. And when the generator coughed and the light surged, I saw a woman carried not by sin alone but by 20 years of grief. And I pressed record because truth needs a witness. For she could speak, a knock, a hush, and Pastor Elijah entered, calm, steady, the kind of man who understands that deliverance is a verb with paperwork. He put his hand on her head, prayed soft in Yoruba and English, asked for light in darkness. And the air changed. Maybe power-cut breeze through broken Louvre blades. Maybe something older. Then Mama Ni sat up like a swimmer from deep water, and the confession broke fast and plain. A woman in black at the market. A witch doctor who promised wealth. They will crave it like they cannot breathe without it. A small calabash to start, and then her own blood, to keep the spell alive. My pen shook and my tape turned, and I asked the only clean question left. Why? And she said it once, and it was the truest word in Lagos. Nini. She wanted a future for her child, school fees, dignity, a name that didn't taste of pity. And here is where a journalist must be two people at once, the recorder of an ugly fact and the keeper of a human face. So I kept both. And outside the house the crowd grew, word traveling faster than Danfo buses free of traffic. She used blood. We ate it. She tied our stomachs. Stones landing against the wall like hard rain. Pastor Elijah raised his voice, not a shout, a verdict. Justice, not murder. And sirens cut through the street, blue lights washing the room. Officers pushing through. Nenine crying, Mama. Turisma Manat saying, I did this for you. And even there. With handcuffs in the doorway, I wrote one more note. Love makes strange choices. But love does not acquit a public harm, and the law took her. And my story began to walk on two legs. The Tao, forensic, and the moral. At court the weeks that followed, the prosecution spread the ledger of evidence. 3 lab reports, staff statements about special days, a recovered calabash from a back room behind the coal stove, my tapes transcribed and tendered, with my name partially sealed because Lagos can love a reporter to death. And the defense did not argue facts, only circumstance, poverty, widowhood, cultural pressures, a city that devours the weak. The judge listened like a stone listens to rain, and when he spoke, his words were iron wrapped in linen. 20 years. No fine could balance what could not be measured. The cravings, the dignity stolen, the trust undone. Outside the high court, cameras flashed and hawkers sold papers with headlines that turned pain into profit. The woman who fed Lagos blood. And I hated our industry a little, and myself a little, then walked to the prison gate the next month with Nini. Because journalism can end at publish, or it can begin at a people. And she chose to begin. Mama Nas in orange, thin but clearer in the eyes, said to my recorder without asking me to switch it off. If I had waited, if I had believed trouble passes, maybe God would have fed us another way. And Pastor Elijah, visiting on Thursdays, told me outside under the almond tree, confession breaks curses but consequence remains. And that line stayed with me like a stone in my pocket. In the months after, I wrote 2 pieces people called brave, and some called wicked. First, a feature on hunger economics. How humiliation pushes people into the arms of anything that offers control. Second, a practical guide to safe eating. Know your vendor, demand open kitchens, watch for patterns too strong for nature. Remember that taste is memory, and memory can be tricked. Letters came to the newsroom. One from a nurse who said she forgave Mama Nin. Another from a man who said he couldn't stop craving stew, and now he knew why. And one from a small town in Ogun, where a pastor read my piece from the pulpit and told people to bless their pots with prayer and science. This is where the story turns its final corner. Sold the last car, closed the last legal door on appeals, and opened a new one in Makoko, a clinic that treats ulcers, infections, and also something no chart knows how to measure. Shame. She called it Mama's Table, and the sign read, free meals, clean pots, clean hands. I stood at the launch with my old cassette recorder and a new notepad, and asked her what forgiveness tasted like. She said, like plain rice at first, strange because you expect stew, but then you learn to taste the rice. And I wrote it as she said it because that's the kind of sentence that feeds people. Lagos moved on like it always does. Yellow taxis coughing. Radio high life on Sunday afternoons. Soldiers at checkpoints arguing about small money. Rain on zinc roofs like typewriter keys. And sometimes I pass the ashes where the restaurant stood, and I remember that not all crimes are born of cruelty. Many are born of fear, and fear is a poor chef. You want a moral city of bright lights and blind corners. Here is one simple enough for a school child, and heavy enough for a judge. It is better to be hungry with clean hands than full with dirty ones. And if you must eat at the roadside, as we all do, know the hands that stir your pot. As for me, Emily Carter, I returned my tapes to their sleeves and my pen to its cap and filed this line last. For the record and for the heart, redemption is not the same as release, but it is still a door. And sometimes the person you love the most is the one you must protect from your own appetite. If this story found you, write me your lesson, keep your kitchens honest. And when the stew smells too sweet to be real, remember that every miracle has a receipt. And sooner or later, Lego sends the bill.